Hi, I'm Mac with P&P Engineering. Today we're going to show you how to install our full plate front bumper on the 2nd gen Nissan Frontier. This will be the same process for our hybrid front bumper. The only difference between these two bumpers is whether you have plated outside wings or tubular outside wings. Here we're going to go through the tools, the hardware, and the parts necessary to install this bumper, and then we'll show you how to put it on the truck. So the tools you're going to need to get this bumper installed is a grinder with a cutoff wheel or some other implement to cut your bumper. If you've got the single piece all plastic front bumper, you can use anything from a hot knife from Harbor Freight, or you can even heat up a razor blade, but a grinder with a cutoff wheel makes this a very quick process. You will not need to cut your front bumper if you have the factory two-piece with the chrome lower bumper. All you'll need to do is unbolt your stock bumper assembly. This will bolt right up to the plastic part that is left right under the headlights from there. You'll also need a 19mm wrench and socket. You can also use 3/4, it's exactly the same size. And you'll need a 13mm wrench and socket. You will get 5 bolts per side to bolt the bumper to 4 factory threaded locations, and a 5th location behind the body mount. You'll put a long 1/2-inch grade 8 bolt through a window in the frame. The parts that you will receive for this are, starting with the core. This will mount to the frame of the truck and everything will mount to that. Then you'll receive the radiator skid, the bumper itself, the fill panel that bolts in between the radiator skid and the bumper. You'll also receive light bar that'll mount up to the built-in brackets inside, and a set of fog lights that bolt onto the adjustable brackets inside. The brackets for the fog lights are adjustable so that you can use several different types of lights if you choose. So let's go over to the truck and see what it takes to put this on. Okay, so now we're ready to get started disassembling the truck. And for that, you'll need a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, a 10mm ratchet, and you need a ratchet for this, not a wrench, because some of the bolt heads are recessed, and a 17mm ratchet. And then you'll need painter's tape, tape off your cut line, and your grinder to make the cut. So our cut line is at the same place where the chrome bumper would disassemble, so that it's the same bumper and the same look whether your truck came with the factory single piece plastic bumper or the 2-piece chrome. And that happens to be right here at this indentation in the plastic. That's where the chrome bumper would disassemble. So we're going to run our tape line above that to keep our paint from splitting as we make our cut, with our 10mm and our Phillips head screwdriver. Now that we've got the center portion of the lower valance off the truck, we're going to loosen the front half of the inner fender liner so we can get access to the factory fog lights and get those unplugged. You've got a Phillips head screw down here, and you'll need a flathead screwdriver for the pop tab up here in this corner. You just need to pry that down and out. And you can reach in and unplug your factory fog lights. Like so. Now that both fog lights are unplugged and disconnected, we will go ahead and run our tape line so that we can get the bumper cut right along the top edge of our indentation. And go all the way to the corner in the wheel well on both sides. Now that we've taped our bumper off, we're ready to go ahead and cut the lower section. Make sure you wear as much PPE as you feel necessary. Gloves, face shield, guard on your grinder. It's all important. Now that we've cut all the way through our bumper, we're going to grab our flathead screwdriver again. We're going to pop out the 3 pop pins right under here that hold the lower portion of the bumper onto a couple of brackets, and then that portion of the skin will come off. Okay, now we're going to remove the factory skid plate, if equipped, crash bar, and tow hook with a 10 and a 17. Start with the skid plate. Just the bolts at the back, and the front is attached to our factory crash bar and will come off together. On the factory crash bar, you've got 1 bolt up here and 1 bolt inside this pocket. They both need to come out. Now we're going to remove the factory tow hook with the same 17. You may need a breaker bar for this depending on the age of your vehicle. You get the same 2 bolt holes on the underside of your frame. On the driver's side, there's typically not a hook factory installed. It's a good idea to run a tap through these 2 holes, as you may have years of road debris, rust impacted into those holes. If you don't have a 12 by 125 tap, you can take and spray a lubricant like Croyle WD-40 on the supplied hardware and very gently run one of those bolts in and out of there to clean out those holes. Now that the crash bar and hook skid plate are removed, you'll need to remove the power steering line bracket and lower radiator hose retainer to install the core. Now that our power steering retainer bracket nut is off, we're going to come over to the passenger side and take off the nut for the oil cooler retaining bracket. That'll get pushed back and zip tied up in the engine bay later on. Now we're going to install rubber grommets on our power steering line. And we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. Okay. Now we're ready to install our core and winch mount. You can use your replacement metric bolts, 17mm head, and use the shorter ones for the front 4 holes. The core you're going to take and install up and at an angle from underneath, and then rotate up. Now that the 4 bolts are in the front of our core, we can install our radiator skid to the bottom of the frame rails. This will bolt onto the same 4 bolt holes that the bottom of our core are held on with. Now that all 4 bolts are in hand tight, you can snug them down with a wrench. Now that we've got the core and the radiator skid installed and all tightened down, now is when you would install a winch onto your winch plate. We're showing this for demonstration purposes. The customer has a different winch that they're going to install at a later time, but we wanted to highlight that you need a winch with a remote mountable solenoid box. Winches such as this, Badlands Apex winch, Warn Xeon 10 or 12K, or the Smittybilt X2O 10 or 12K will all fit, or other winches that are approximately the same size. We're going to take this out and move along to the bumper skin install. Now that the core and the radiator skid are installed on the truck, we're going to install the light bar and the fog lights that will be included into the bumper before we put the bumper skin on the truck. You'll receive a 20-inch light bar and 2 fog lights. Your fog lights will come with an adjustable bracket that will bolt to a welded-in bracket on the inside of the bumper. The 20-inch light bar will drop onto a set of tabs that are pre-welded onto the inside of the bumper. Then all you have to do is tighten the bolts down, and that will be completely installed. Fog lights will bolt onto our L bracket here. The L bracket will then bolt into your slotted bracket inside the bumper. This is extremely adjustable, up, down, left, right. If you ever want to change this light out to a different light, either larger or smaller, should be able to make that fit. So the fog light bracket is held in with 2 carriage bolts. We'll install 2 nylock nuts. Once these bolts are loosely installed, you'll be able to adjust your bracket up and down and your light side to side to get that centered on your fog light hole. Now that we have all our lights in the bumper, we're ready to put the bumper skin up to the core and install all the bolts that will hold it on. It will help if you have a couple of helpers to hold the bumper up while you install the bolts. This is where you use the large grade 8 bolts to hold the bumper skin to the core. There's multiple slots on the bumper side and the core side where you'll lift up or down. You'll match the height of your winch plate depending on if you have a body lift or not. Okay, now that our bumper's installed, we're going to reinstall our factory wheel liner retainers and then cut our wheel liner so it's not hanging down. We've got one pop pin that goes up into the inner corner and one Phillips head screw that goes into here. And then we will cut right along our yellow line to remove the fender liner. Razor knife works great for this. Goes right through it. Straight down the corner, and it comes out. So the last step in our bumper installation is to install our long 1/2-inch bolt into the rear hole on our core, which goes through the window in our frame right behind the body mount. I'm going to tighten this down. Okay. Now if this is hand tight, we'll grab our wrench, tighten that down all the way. Now if that's tight, we just need to put one on the driver's side in the same place and our installation will be complete. Now that we've got our bumper skin on, we'll go ahead and put our intermediate plate in with the supplied carriage bolts. We recommend putting a couple in the top so that it holds its own weight. Fishing all the carriage bolts up on the bottom is not the easiest task, but you don't want to be fighting with the weight of the skid plate at the same time. Inside, right there. Okay. Now that we've got a couple bolts in the top, we're going to sink some carriage bolts in the bottom, get them all lined up, and then all we've got to do is fish a wrench back there, tighten everything down, and this installation will be complete.